There we go. Hi,
Hi, how are you? Where are you now? I heard you were traveling.
I am in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're familiar. Um, I first just want to say it's such an honor to get to talk to you. I'm personally a huge fan. I can't tell you how many times my whole family has watched your documentary. Everyone from my nearly 90-year-old grandpa to my little brother loves it. And your new book is really incredible. I thank you for sending me a copy. I already enjoyed the entire thing.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. As I say to people about the film, it's not really my film. I'm just in it.
Yes, but
But
you're it's the
yeah,
same way
but I appreciate it.
people I saw Meryl Streep is in your new book. It's the same way people say it's, Meryl's film when she's in a film. You really you stole the show.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Um I just had a question. I couldn't find an answer to this anywhere. You're always very particular, both in your book and on Instagram, that you say you make pictures. You don't take them. Can you explain the difference?
I mean, I think I picked that up from Ansel Adams. Although his kind of photography is so different than mine. Um, he inspired me when I was starting out in his attention to detail. And I paid attention to the way he composed and framed his pictures, and the way that he even printed them and matted them and framed them. And it's creating a photograph in a much different way than I do. But that's what he used to call it. He used to say, make a photograph.
I think the distinction
And
is so powerful.
yeah, and I think it's more um it's more of my way of saying that there's thought behind every picture that I do. So that it's not, just um just it's not just like grabbing a picture. Or a lot of people now use the word capture, which yeah, I don't necessarily like that word. So it's more going back to the analog days of Ansel Adams.
Okay.
That there's I think of it as a creative process, even though it is, everything's digital these days. There is, thought and to the creation of the image. So that's kind of why I use the word make.
Yeah, I just think it's so smart, and it really sticks out as something intentional. Um, so just going back to the creation of the book, your previous books were so popular because they, of course, threw shade at the most recent former president. But how did you come up with this idea for your latest book? Because it really focuses on the people that most people sadly overlook inside that presidential bubble.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I was doing the Obama book, the first book I did, which essentially was about him and his presidency, or at least the way, I saw his presidency and the way I saw him as a human being. There are a few pictures in there that I tried to show kind of away from the main action, what it's like to be inside the presidential bubble. And I always had, as I think I was probably as I was putting that book together, I was remembering that I had made a conscious effort to photograph the things I saw inside, I call it inside the bubble, that weren't of him. that it was, but they were part of the presidency. And I never really thought of doing a book about that, but I think as I was putting the Obama book together, I thought that maybe that's my second book. And so I was thinking about that a lot as I was putting the Obama book together. And then I got sidetracked by the Shade book because I was so upset with what was going on. And as you probably know, I was throwing shade a lot on Instagram. And I was like, you know what, I think I need to put this collectively in a book, the Shade thing. And so that sort of like was a sidetracked me. And then,
It was always
I
in the
think
way.
yeah, and I think then during COVID, with frankly not much to do, I started revisiting the idea of doing this book, which I wanted to call Inside the Bubble. That was the working title in my mind. And the publisher thought that that title just wouldn't work, that people wouldn't quite understand it. And which is why we came up with the title, The West Wing and Beyond. But it was always that, in my mind, is like thinking about all the scenes inside the bubble that the president himself may have never seen, but I was always on the lookout for those scenes.
Have you heard from him? Did you run a copy by him before you sent it to your publisher? Because it has to be such a neat time. It's almost like a scrapbook, that you put together for him. It's a gift because he really might have been too busy hustling.
No, the only thing I did is I sent him. I made a digital proof sheet of about 12 pictures that were going to be in the book, and sent him an email with that, with a JPEG of that proof sheet. And I said, I'm doing a new book, on what I saw inside the bubble. And I attached that JPEG, and he got it. He goes, oh, this is going to be great. I love those kinds of pictures the best, because how people don't really want to look at pictures of themselves. So I think he appreciated it, and I didn't really need to send him the whole book. Actually, there's books on the way to him now. So you've actually gotten your copy before he has.
Wow. I think that is probably the most flattering thing that's ever happened in my life. I did want to ask you a little bit about life inside the presidential bubble, and just naturally being a curious person, I have a million questions. So if you can just say the first thing that comes to your mind. You don't necessarily need to elaborate on any of these, but I've never even been on a tour of the White House. So any insight you're able to provide will be very interesting. The former president first was famously a night owl, but I wanted to know, since you were kind of around him, you said between 10 and 18 hours a day, what was his demeanor like in the morning? Was he human? Was he a little grumpy? Would he need that first cup of coffee?
He didn't drink coffee, actually, which I don't know how any adult can survive the morning without having coffee, but he didn't drink coffee. I think that, he worked out every day, literally every day of the year, even on Christmas morning. And I think that was his cup of coffee, if you will. I think that's what got him going. So I'd say, 95% of the time when he came to the office, he was in a good mood. Sometimes he wasn't, if he wasn't feeling well, or but for the most part, he was like much more chipper than I ever was in the morning, let's say.
And what time would those mornings start? Like on a quote unquote normal day, which I know is few and far between, probably in the White House.
It's funny. He started, I remember the first day, so the day after the inauguration, when he had been up till 3 o'clock in the morning. that he walked in the Oval around 9 a.m. And that was his intention, to start at 9 and to go home at 6:30 for dinner. And then if he need be, come back. And as the 8 years went by, the start of the day got later and later, and the end of the day got later and later. So he kind of shifted
Okay.
to starting a little bit later, 9:30, sometimes even 10 o'clock. And then, would end up going home at 7 or 7:30. Especially if, the girls were out with friends or what, and he didn't have to rush home to get home for family dinner.
Okay.
So I
Speaking
kind
of,
of, and then of course there would be, certain like breakfasts that he would start much earlier, 7:30, 8 o'clock. But those were kind of rare. And then in terms of like the nights, I'd say that, maybe on average, I'd say 2 or 3 times a week, he'd have some function at night, formal function where he would be there for, multiple hours. And then the rest of the nights, he'd work in his office upstairs in the residence after dinner until, the wee hours.
okay. Speaking of dinners, I did want to ask about lunch, because you mentioned in your book that that is kind of the one time that of the day that you might break away from the president and go eat in your office. Would you ever eat lunch with the president? And could you ever order something from the White House kitchen?
So there was a White House mess that was open to the senior staff, and they had a small dining room. I never ate in the dining room. I always got something to go and ate it at my desk, so tuna fish salad or, something like that. And I think I'm trying to think. I think maybe twice, those of us that worked in the outer Oval Office had lunch with him. Like we had like pizza lunch a couple times where we would order pizza and we'd all, sit with him and have pizza. But I'd say on average 4 to 5 days a week he had lunch by himself, and I'd say on the average 1 day a week he would have a guest come in, whether it be, the vice president came once a week. So I guess maybe on average twice a week he'd have a guest in. Once a week it was the vice president. They had lunch once a week on unless, the VP or we were traveling. And then he'd have, various people come in. He had Colin Powell come in a couple times, and congressional leaders. I mean, it just depends. People that he'd want to meet, would come in for lunch. He had lunch with Michael Jordan one time.
I'm from the Chicago area, so yes,
Yeah.
I understand the hype. I this is very niche. People will have to read your book to understand this, but was the coconut cream pie as good as it looked?
Yeah, Susie made a good coconut cream pie for sure. It was really good.
That's just such a kind, thoughtful gesture to be that observant too.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
neat part of your book. So how many days a week were you on the road? And I know you had a whole section that focused on coming home. You liked being home, but I mean, were those trips fun? What was the most enjoyable trip for you?
I have no idea how many. I mean, it's hard to say. We were on the road, this number of days. I mean, I cite the number of hours I flew on Air Force One. I think I said the hours. I know the miles was
Yes,
like over
you
one
did.
and a half million.
And you said how many times you circled the entire globe?
Yeah, it was like 56 or 57, I think. I mean, it was just crazy. So, it was, we were on the road a lot, obviously. And there were a lot of good trips. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint any, so many. I mean, President Obama just narrated the series on the world's great national parks. And sort of as a promo for that, he and I sat down together talking about the US national parks that we had visited together. Just as a little promo for that Netflix special that they filmed. And I remember him saying that the Alaska trip that we did was, he thought was one of his favorite trips. I think he was talking about domestically. And then we also did a trip to Yosemite, which he likes. So and that was actually true for me too, just because I mentioned Ansel Adams. A lot of the great Ansel Adams work was done at Yosemite National Park. And then Alaska was just this open wilderness. And we were kind of lucky in that, for the most part, when we were there, the weather was like perfect. And
what month was that, or what time of year?
So I want to say I'm trying to think. There's actually a picture of in the profile of the advanced lead profile, where there's a picture of a woman who is one of our advanced people getting splashed by water on that trip. And I probably said,
oh yes,
when it was, but I think I may have just put the year in the caption.
Okay. I was just curious if you had any insight, because you said it was so beautiful. So any aspiring photographer?
Well, it was definitely between June and September, but
okay,
I can't remember. I kind of want to say August or September, but I can't remember for sure.
In terms
in terms of like foreign trips, I mean, I think for me, it was always it was the places that I had never been before. So I had been to Russia, to China, a lot of places before, and so going back to those places wasn't as special. So for me, it was like going to Egypt for the first time, going to Prague in the Czech Republic for the first time, going to Stonehenge. We did a side trip to Stonehenge. So it was always those trips to countries I had never been before, that even Saudi Arabia, I had never been there before, and just like, what a I won't say.
No, go ahead.
No, what a Saudi Arabia reminds me of a place that I would never want to live. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Honest. What was the most impressive feature on Air Force One?
Most impressive feature.
To you.
To me.
Most of us are never gonna be on it. So is it?
I think it's the space. It's unlike any other 747. I mean, I think the maximum number of passengers is like 80 or something. So you can imagine what that means. That means there's a lot of space, and the chairs were very comfortable.
Oh, okay. And then you explain the difference between the Beast and the Spare, that second armored limousine in your book. Who is in the beast besides the president if it wasn't you?
So it was him, Secret Service driver in the front, the head of his Secret Service detail also in the front. So those two guys were always there. And then riding with him would be whoever he invited to ride with him. So it could be Valerie Jarrett, could be a governor, it could be special guest, could be his press secretary for whatever reason, just kind of like whoever he wanted to ride with him. Or sometimes, just be him and Michelle, or sometimes it would just be him. And the only time I rode in the limousine with him, probably a dozen or 2 dozen times, but there would have to be a purpose. Like if it was, he was going to call a head of state on, as he was driving to the airport or something like that, and we needed to document that. Or if he was riding with, a governor, or just some noted guest. I actually rode in the limo with him, the beast with him, 2 or 3 times when he was with another head of state, which was very unusual for another head of state to ride with him. In particular, I remember I did that with the Prime Minister of Japan. I did that with the then president of Russia, but it was before Putin. It was Medvedev. And
Was the Prime Minister of Japan Abe, who just got assassinated?
It was trying to think if it was Abe or the guy that preceded him. I believe it was Abe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they had a pretty close relationship, it seemed like.
They had a pretty, yeah. I mean, because he was in office for a while, yeah. So I believe it was him. And Abe spoke English enough that I don't think they needed a translator, interpreter. And there was one other head of state, but I don't remember who it was.
Your memory is so impressive. What is the most dangerous position you and the president ever went into? Or potentially dangerous? You said you focus a lot on the Secret Service, and you explained that every trip home you could sense some relief from them, that they, you made it home without any security incidents. I mean, and we just mentioned Abe, who was assassinated. Were there any precarious situations for you?
I mean, I think that I had confidence in the Secret Service, that the events that led to other presidents having incidents, the most recent was Reagan when he was shot, that the protocols had changed enough that I didn't see, I mean, you never know. But they were so thorough that I don't know that I ever worried that much. But there, it turns out that there was, I can talk about this now, I couldn't talk about it before, that there was a major threat on Inauguration Day, that they were, had gotten intelligence that somebody was gonna cause a incident inside the crowd at the inauguration. And they had precautions on how they would respond to that if in fact it did happen, right? So that makes you a little wary. And then I think I guess the other times that I was that my I wouldn't say that I was called it dangerous, but that I was aware of potential, was one time he actually walked out of the White House without telling anybody to go to a coffee shop. And obviously there's always Secret Service with him. And so they, accompanied him, but usually if he would ever walk anywhere, they'd shut down streets, they'd, have people out looking at rooftops and stuff like that. And on this time, he just like left.
For a reason?
I think because he was feeling trapped, inside the White House. He hadn't traveled for a while and he just needed to like get out. And he thought that this was a really good idea. They just like walk down to, I think we went to a Starbucks, and then of course he ordered tea, not coffee.
And who reprimands the president in a situation?
Oh,
like
the
that?
Secret Service, head Secret Service guy reprimanded him afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
And but that makes you, that makes you be aware of all of a sudden, even with Secret Service around him, their streets weren't blocked and people were sitting outside Starbucks that hadn't been, security checked. And so, it makes you aware of what's going on. And then I think, the other times were more like the over enthusiasm at some events where no one was intentionally going to hurt him, but that the crowd was like, crushing forward, that it made it dangerous for them, maybe not for him. That there's a picture actually in my in the Obama book in Kenya when he was working the rope line, and you can sort of see the anxiety on the face of the Secret Service because everybody's crushing forward. He's not going to get harmed, but certainly some of those people that are crushing each other forward could,
Both you and the president are big Sox fans, but different kinds of Sox, red and white.
Yeah.
You ever watch the Sox on Sox series together?
No, I don't remember. The only time we would have is if like they had been playing, while we were on Air Force One, he might have piped it in, but and he actually is not that big of a baseball fan, to be honest with you.
Wait, that really hurts me because my family are really big Sox fans.
No, he's definitely a Sox fan, just because, he spent a lot of time on the south side of Chicago. But at the same time, he's really not a big baseball fan. He's more of a basketball first and football and probably tennis, more so than he is baseball or hockey.
That's interesting. Now, Bo or Sonny, who was the most photogenic Obama dog?
Well, Bo.
You have a nice picture of you and Bo in your book.
Yeah, Bo was my buddy. So neither one of them was that photogenic because like the thing that was hard is that they had such a black coat, right? Black fur, that black dogs and white dogs are both hard to photograph, just because it's hard to get the detail in their fur and then still see their eye, still see their eyes. But Bo is definitely my favorite dog.
You've taken so many iconic photographs. So which one is your favorite?
I get asked that question a lot, and I always punt because for me, it was always about creating the best body of work.
So you're more than any individual photo.
Right. So, I let there's something going on around the internet for a while. It was like Pete Souza's 40 favorite photos. And it's like, I don't know where that came up from, because I never said these are my 40 favorite photos, but somebody somebody claims that I these are my 40 favorite photos. And it's funny because probably if I were to do 40 favorite photos, I'd say half of them would not be in that group that I supposedly chose, you know.
Well, how about
I
I
mean,
frame it this? I'll frame it this way, because in your book, you mentioned that Colin Powell had said that he had one of your jumbos hanging above his hot tub.
yeah.
So was there anyone else that you were surprised or just simply flattered to learn that has, you know, your pictures in their home?
I mean, I know, well, I'll say that the two pictures that I get the most requests for are the Situation Room photograph, you know, during the Bin Laden raid, just because it's such a historic photo. And it's like, that's not really one of my favorite photos, because I mean, I think it's important historically, but it's not, I don't know that it would be one that I would hang on the wall of my house. And then the other one is the Jacob Philadelphia photo, you know, where the little kid's touching his head. And
And he just graduated high school. That is amazing.
yeah, and I've matter of fact, I have I made note cards up with that picture on it, you know.
Okay.
So when I send people notes for various reasons, I use that picture just because in some ways it's a symbol of what the Obama presidency meant to so many people, you know. And I guess I was flattered that there was some, I don't know if it was an interview or what it was, but where, you know, Jay-Z of all people was talking about that photograph. You know, and Michelle has talked about that photograph in interviews before on, you know, how much that you know, sort of symbolized what his presidency meant.
I do have to ask you a little about Wisconsin, because that's where we're based. And I know you're in Madison, you know, you live there, although you're not physically there right now. What's the best picture you've made since moving here?
In Madison?
Yes.
Oh, it's probably one of my granddaughter. So,
Okay.
yeah. Because like that, she's my, you know, #1 photographic subject these days. I mean, I don't post stuff of her. I mean, I have a couple times, but we, you know, every time, she doesn't live in Madison, but they come to Madison a lot.
Okay.
And so certainly one of the pictures of her that I've shot is you know, has to be the favorite. I don't even know which one, but there's a lot of them.
Well, and you included a picture from Dane County Regional in your new book too. Do you have any memories of stopping here when you were with Obama? Did he have anything complimentary to say about the area?
What picture did I include? I can't even remember.
It was, I actually wrote down, it was page 200. You included a picture of, it was just Air Force One on the tarmac at Dane County Regional.
It was?
Yeah.
That's a what?
This one.
That's a Dane County? Oh, I forgot.
That's how memorable Madison is to you, Pete?
Yeah. That's funny. Like, I mean, in the first book, in the Obama book, there's a photo from Madison where he spoke at the university, and there were like, you know, thousands of people in the crowd. It was an outdoor picture on that. What do you call that area? Is it the green, or I don't know?
Ascom Hill.
Yeah,
right
on the hill. And there was another one where we that's not in any of my books, but it was I guess it would have been on you know, I'm so bad at the street names. Not what's the street that the city hall is on, that
Oh, now you're
is
testing
it-
me. Yes,
is
I
it-
know what
is
you're
it,
talking about, though.
I don't know, is that, can't remember. In any case, he did an event where people were like lined up all the way back to the Capitol.
Yes, Martin Luther
Um,
King Jr. Boulevard.
yeah. So it was, the stage was like set up on the boulevard, and the backdrop was the state capitol. And actually, Bruce Springsteen was a special guest at that event. This was a 2012 campaign event. Like, and I, never thought that, Madison was in my future.
Yeah, a little foreshadowing. Last question for you. 5 years from now, let's say the Obamas are planning a wedding for one of their daughters. I know that you are pretty much retired from political photography, but you did recently return to the White House for that portrait unveiling. So if the Obamas asked, would you be the wedding photographer?
If the Obamas asked me to do anything, I would do it. I mean, I did the when here's like how I look at it is, when Malia graduated from high school, President Obama was still the president, and he, as a result, has a lot of great pictures of Malia at her high school graduation, right? Because I was there to document it. After he left office, Sasha graduated from a high school, and I told him that I was going to come photograph Sasha's high school graduation, because if I didn't, all they would have is a bunch of shitty iPhone pictures. So I on my own, I volunteered and I went and photographed her high school graduation, so they would have some decent pictures. And I would do the same for, either of the girls' weddings if they ask. My guess is Malia and Sasha will be smart enough to hire someone younger and more hipper than me to photograph their wedding. But if the Obamas asked me, I of course would do it.
And that just leads to the quick natural follow-up, though. If you had to, since you're slamming the Obama's photography skills, if you had to trust someone in the immediate Obama family to take a picture, who would you pass that iPhone to? Would you give it to Sasha?
Malia. No, Malia, because Malia, she actually took a photography class, and and would often, not often, but occasionally carry a camera around, and so it would definitely be Malia.
Okay.
He's not that bad of a photographer. I'll have to say. I mean, when he went on one of his trips post presidency, I forget where he went. He went to some, beautiful place on a beach somewhere, and he like had to show me his photographs when he got back. So I mean, he's not really that bad of a photographer.
I gather he's not that bad at anything.
He's what?
Guy. He's a pretty talented guy. He's not really bad at much.
I mean, he's not that good of a photographer, but he's not that bad of a photographer either,
Okay, we'll take it. We don't want to insult him here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
For taking so much time. It was so fascinating. And your book is really amazing. I'm really excited to share it with my parents too.
Oh, thanks. Great. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So thanks again. And I'll make sure to send your publisher a link to this interview once we write it out.
Okay. Great.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay,
Bye.
bye.